My most asked question is, what is your most dangerous reptile to keep? Which is the one that's most likely to hurt you? And luckily, the only hurt I ever feel from these animals is emotional abandonment. Come back, come back. But today we'll talk about the top 5 that are most likely to hurt me. If you've been following Doug, I got Doug about a year ago and he was in bad shape. You can see that he's actually got a lot of his spikes growing back and he looks overall much better. And that's what we're going to talk about first. This is Doug, the green iguana, coming in at number 5. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about the species, not my individual animal. So I'm talking about my 5 most dangerous individual species for potential danger to humans, but mostly prey. But that's weird, right? Because the caveat is prey, and this guy eats, well, gardens, and no garden is safe. Let me tell you, this guy will eat you out of house and home. I actually did a grocery order today because it's -5 outside and my garden no longer does it. I miss summer. And I'm gonna make the comparison to dogs in this video. Don't worry, I love dogs. They shouldn't be outlawed or anything like that, of course. Just most people know dogs and most people don't know reptiles, so I'm trying to bridge the gap. And whether you have a dog or a reptile, you can get everything you need in one spot. For those of you who have bearded dragons and ball pythons and leopard geckos and a lot of really cute things that definitely aren't dangerous, I put together the best kits, the ones that actually work with the best enclosures, the best lights, the best substrates, all of it and more in one spot. There's a link below. I made it super easy for you. I've always wished that there was a place I could just click once and everything was right in front of my face instead of going pages and pages and pages. And that's what we did at Chewy.com. So get all your stuff for your reptiles and you can get all your stuff for your dogs at the same place at the same time. So full disclosure, I'm not afraid of this guy. He's not gonna hurt me. I mean, the issue with iguanas is some of them don't tame out well, especially if you don't put in the work. And if you don't know, Doug came to me last year. He's probably 5 or 6 years old. He's already gone through iguana puberty, which is a thing. If you get a cute little baby iguana, they're adorable and they're gonna act great for you. The problem is they're going to grow up and they're not going to act great for you for a while, especially males. Males can become very aggressive during their teenage years or that time of their life where it'd be comparable to them going through puberty like humans do when they're teenagers. During that time, he's going to show that dewlap off. He's just kind of like, it's just chilling right now, but sometimes they'll really pronounce that dewlap and they'll look big and scary and then they'll whip that tail. That's the other thing. Now, Doug is getting a little bit of his tail back, actually. It's actually kind of growing back a bit, which is interesting. This is a new development that I have not even really touched yet. Because part of his tail fell off. And because of the bad conditions he was in, a lot of his tail just wasn't really working when I got him, and that's coming back. Because most iguanas have very strong tails. Their tails can be crazy. They won't break your limbs like, say, a water monitor tail could if they wanted to, but they can definitely leave lesions and bruise you pretty bad. And those jaws of his are strong. They are powerful because they have to bite through roots and things like that in the wild, although mostly what they're going to be eating is leafy greens. They're also going to use those as part of their mating rituals too. So this animal is equipped to be scary to bigger animals to defend itself and to rival iguanas. Not to mention that because they live in places where, well, they live in Florida now, but they're not supposed to. A lot of the places in their native range, there are predators and they have to be able to look scary, be scary, and maybe bite their way out of a situation. But with that said, Doug isn't going to hurt me for the sake of hurting me. He's only going to hurt something or someone if he feels like his life is in danger. And the problem is most iguanas aren't as socialized as Doug. And keep in mind, this is a 5-foot lizard, okay? Well, this one isn't. This lizard's probably, I don't know, 3.5 or 4 feet, but big males can get to 5 feet. And if Doug had a really good home growing up out of an egg all the way until adulthood and was fed properly and everything else, he would be much, much bigger than he is right now. And even so, those claws are tearing me apart. I mean, he's being pretty well behaved right now. And after this segment, I'm going to put him back. But if he wanted to, I mean, and he has before made me bleed with his claws. And it's not that he wants to, it's just they're strong and powerful. He has to climb trees in the wild. They're arboreal animals, so they need really strong hands and feetsies, I think is the medical term. And on the end are these crazy claws. And we do manicure them, and he's due for one. Just like, oh, yeah. So yeah, if you're a salad, Doug is very dangerous. And if you get an iguana, just keep in mind, they're not all gonna be as cool as him. Number 4, emerald tree boas. Now, keep in mind, you're gonna see a theme here. All of these animals, I feel like a lot of people do the most dangerous animals in their collection or which animal is most likely to kill me, and they're fun and great and I have nothing against them, but a lot of those videos are predicated on their animals actually being scary, and these aren't. Now keep in mind, an emerald tree boa could really do some damage. This is the longest teeth of any snake who isn't venomous. Now there's snakes with longer teeth, but they're all gonna hurt you badly, and this animal would just probably, I mean, you probably wouldn't even need stitches. I mean, you'd get a little bit of a laceration and you'd probably bleed because every snake and lizard that I know of anyway has an anticoagulant in their mouth. So when they bite you, it's gonna bleed way more than if it were, say, a paper cut or something else, because there's an anticoagulant, and the whole idea is to make you bleed more. But the good thing is, when animals like this bite you, you're very unlikely to get any sort of infection. And that's because that anticoagulant will make you bleed, and the blood is gonna force out any of the bacteria. And of course, most of these animals don't have lots of bacteria in their mouth, and different strains and less harmful ones than things like cats and dogs. If you get bit by a cat, go to the hospital. If you get bit by a snake, take a photo for Instagram. I don't know, you're fine. But the point is, even though my emerald tree boas are quick to defend themselves and I wouldn't want to get bit by one, it would be a more severe bite, it's more severe in comparison to other things. And other things like ball pythons and stuff like that, it's not a big deal. I mean, I've seen literally teenage girls get bit by ball pythons and laugh about it. Like it's that little of a deal. Where if you get bit by a dog or a cat, it'd be bad news. And of course, dogs and cats are great. I have a few dogs. I love them. They're great. I'm just saying that in comparison to animals that your friends probably have, all of these reptiles are way less dangerous. Unless you're a mouse or a tree shrew, which in general is what a lot of these animals eat in the wild, these emerald tree boas. We found that out. Dave Coffin, a friend of mine, went to the Amazon and he looked for these things. And it seems like that is what they're eating, is these fast-moving creatures. Not only that, but birds too. So they need these giant teeth so that they can go ahead and grab them. And if they miss a little bit, the tooth is going far enough in there that it's not just getting away. Like a barbless fishing hook, you know? So it's going through the flesh enough where it can retract that animal back into themselves as their body retracts. And then it throws a coil around, and then, you know how constriction works, right? Every time an animal breathes in, it goes tighter and tighter until the animal can no longer breathe out, and then it basically causes cardiac arrest, and that's how constrictors work. But emerald tree boas in captivity can't hurt humans that way. Emerald tree boas could not kill you or really harm you other than make you bleed. And I've got 4 of them. I love them. They're some of my favorite animals. They're absolutely freaking gorgeous. And if you want to see the massive enclosure they're going in, last week we did a video. You can watch it right here. The enclosure is in the background there. Number 3, Tegus. Now, keep in mind, I have a black and white Tegu, and in my opinion, they're about as dangerous as a golden retriever. Like, that's kind of what they are. They're a scale puppy. That's what people call them. They're such a chill animal, such amazing lizards. They get about 4 feet, so they do get rather big. However, if you see them in the wild, and there's lots of videos of people finding them, either invasive ones in Florida or their native range in South America, and they come mouth agape, ready to bite. And they've got crazy teeth. The good news is, in captivity, unless, I mean, they go through this puberty, which is like a puberty, kind of like I described with Doug there and his kind, the iguanas. They can be a little bit more territorial, and sometimes they're food motivated, but again, they're not gonna be able to really hurt you like a big carnivorous mammal or something like that. I'd much rather take on a tegu than a cat. I just feel like you have much more of a chance, and realistically you can kind of charm your way out of it, because tegus, once you hold them for a bit, even if they're one of the crazy ones, which there's very few of, they settle down pretty easily. But most black and white tegus are super chill. Now keep in mind, there's other tegus like gold tegus. I wouldn't recommend those for pets for most people. They are smaller, but in the most part, not as chill as black and whites. I love Argentine black and whites. Unfortunately, mine is the worst defense animal of all time. She sleeps usually from September until March, or maybe even later until April sometimes, because they go down to what's called a brumation, where for the winter months, they just kind of chill. Kind of like a bear hibernating, but they move around a little bit more. Mine is the laziest tegu, and generally pretty cool. I mean, unless you're a roach, I mean, or a mouse. Like, look at, like, would you want to be this mouse? I wouldn't want to be this mouse. And again, of course, I'm going to get comments about, well, people who are trying to make laws are going to watch this video. Good. I hope you do. I'm trying to show you that these animals that people think are so dangerous really aren't. The most dangerous animals in my collection, I would bring to a child's birthday party. So if you're one of the PETA folks, I have a message for you.
Scram! Get out of here!
My second most dangerous animal are Burmese pythons. Look how dangerous this animal is. That's the cutest freaking yawn I've ever seen. Burmese pythons, don't get me wrong, can be big, but they don't kill people or hurt people. Burmese pythons, again, are like the kind of puppy dog type snakes of the snake world. I always compare them to golden retrievers. I know I already made that comparison, but I love goldens, obviously. I've got one. And I love this animal here, and a bunch of them. I have had several Burmese pythons. I got rid of some of them, and now I'm just focusing on the ones that are the most personable and I keep as pets. I don't breed them, I just love to have them, and if we ever start doing presentations at schools or libraries or whatever for kids, these would be animals that I always bring. These animals are showy, and there's a bunch of different morphs, and they look big and not really scary because look at their face, right? I mean, they look scary until you get close to them, and then they're just really cool, really fun, and one of the animals I'm not afraid to take out basically in front of anybody. There's certain animals that, I've got this Maclat's python, which is very small right now, and she takes a while, or he takes a while rather, I should say, to kind of calm down and not be striky. And don't get me wrong, you can't hurt me either, but the Burms, I take them out in the same way that you take out your dog to show your friends or your family. I mean, these animals can get almost 20 feet, or if you overfeed them, 20 feet, but in general, they're going to be small enough where, sure, I suggest you have 2 people in the room just for absolute safety, but the animals that I have are 10 feet, something like that, and full grown. And if you love Burms and you just don't want something that big, there are dwarf varieties. They're hard to find. I'm not going to say where to get them because I don't really know, but there are some that pop up every once and then, and you can get a Burmese python that gets, 1.5 times the size of a ball python, just with a fun personality, goofier looking face, and a whole bunch of different morphs. So always exercise caution with a Burmese python, but I think it's the same thing with exercising caution with, a big dog or something like that too. You wouldn't bat an eye to have, a Rottweiler next to your kid, and I don't think you should have bat an eye to have a Burmese python next to your kid too. The same thing applies for both. Do you know their personality? And supervision. Always supervise kids, or really adults for that matter, with other reptiles. And lastly, my most dangerous animal, this little frog here. Now there's 2 varieties. There's the mince and then there's the orange. Well, there's technically yellows and orange Blackfoots, but either way, in general, green and yellow orange. And in the wild, these animals can kill 20 men with 1 frog because they have these toxins in them. In the wild, they're going to eat things like beetles and mites and stuff like that, and then those alkaloids in those animals will metabolize in the liver and produce a toxin on the skin because there are venom glands on the skin or just under the skin of these frogs. And although lots of dart frog species could definitely hurt a human, this is called the terrible dart frog for a reason, and I have a bunch of them. This is the most poisonous of all the vertebrae on Earth, but mine are as goofy as they look because we don't feed them those things that they eat in the wild. So in captivity, I could easily put one of these in my mouth, swish it around, and spit it out. Don't do that. Don't put frogs in your orifices. Just don't do that. But hypothetically, you could, and you'd be fine. Because in captivity, we feed them fruit flies and crickets. And that's the thing I love about Terribilis. They get big enough they can eat small crickets or medium-sized crickets. And for that reason, I have a bunch, and I'm not afraid at all. I mean, don't touch frogs because it's bad for them, but they're not bad for you. And they aren't poisonous at all. They are as poisonous as the bullfrog that you let your kid pick up at the park. They are that poisonous, so not at all. Now keep in mind, in the wild, don't ever freaking touch one, and it's cool to have them, and it's one of those things where they're big and bold and showy, and they have a beautiful call, and I just love to have them, but I mean, they're about as dangerous as any of the other animals that I have, which is not very. So if you're looking for this big, scary, oh my God, this guy's got all these crazy, yeah, sorry, I didn't really do that for you. The point of the video is to show everybody that reptiles aren't scary, even the ones you think that are. Keeping reptiles is very, very safe, and if you've been thinking about it and you're new, I recommend maybe giving it a try if you're ready. Thanks everyone for watching and hitting the like and subscribe button. We've got lots of really fun videos coming this month and in the new year. And as always, a special thanks to the Patreon supporters. You guys get videos early, discounts on merch. You know about, okay, I bought the most expensive reptile I've ever purchased ever. That's on Patreon. I'll see you guys next week.